Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Right now we're just crossing into Nevada, where Highway 395 takes on a whole new kind of character. It's less popular than the California stretch, but it cuts through one of the most interesting parts of the state. Over the next few days, we'll be following Highway 395 through western Nevada, uncovering hidden stories, and seeing just how much history is tucked away out here in the Great Basin. Every time Highway 395 crosses a state line, aside from one exception where it misses by less than a mile, there is a body of water. Here, entering Nevada, we have Topaz Lake. Right now we are looking back towards the California side of the lake. Topaz Lake is called the Jewel of Two States, but the current Topaz Lake is actually a man-made reservoir created in 1922, covering up a smaller, natural lake. The original lake, named Alkali Lake, had some historical significance, as it was on the route taken by American explorer Jedediah Smith in late spring of 1827, when he became the first non-Native American to cross the Sierra Nevada. We are now looking towards Nevada. Topaz Lake is a popular recreation area, as you can see by the boats out here on a weekday. Both the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife stock the lake with trout for fishing. And since we just crossed into Nevada, of course there is a casino here too. From here, we're going to be heading north, and we will follow Highway 395 through western Nevada until we reach California again. This section of the highway is going to be completely different from the section that runs through California's eastern Sierra. Only 85 miles of Highway 395 are in Nevada, making it by far the state with the least miles along the whole route. But it travels through some of the most historic parts of the state, and also two of the 5 largest cities on the highway. The corridor that became US 395 initially included several early toll and state roads. For example, this part of the road was once State Route 19. Then in 1934, the route of Highway 395 was officially designated through the state as it was extended down from Washington to San Diego, California. For nearly half of Highway 395's course in Nevada, the road now shares a route with Interstate 580, but we'll try to stick to the original road as much as possible. I think a lot of people overlook this stretch of Highway 395 because it isn't considered as scenic as the sections in California, but I'm excited to explore the history in this part of Nevada. Not many towns can make this claim, but this one can. Gardnerville was founded by a haunted house. In 1879, Lawrence Gilman bought the Kent House, which was located just south of Genoa and rumored to be haunted by a stagecoach robbing ghost. After purchasing 7 acres from homesteader John Gardner, Gilman relocated the house here. After being moved here, the Kent House was renamed the Gardnerville Hotel, and the town of Gardnerville, named after Gardner, emerged around it. For a time, a lot of the hotel's business came from travelers making the journey between Carson City, Nevada, and Bodie, California. The hotel burned down a long time ago, so who knows what happened to the ghost, but right across the street is the J.T. Basque Bar. This building was moved here from Virginia City in the late 19th century. Originally it was the restaurant for the Gardnerville Hotel. It became the J.T. Basque Bar and Dining Room in 1955. Unrelated to anything Basque, beginning in the 1870s and continuing through the 1880s, a strong Danish immigrant presence developed here. They formed the Valhalla Society in 1885 and met at Valhalla Hall. And while the haunted hotel that the town sprung up around is no longer here, there are a few historic buildings of note for us to take a look at. Here is the French Bar, built in 1914. You can see its sign in a lot of old photos of the town, though it's been somewhat changed over the years. And of course, being in Nevada, we have a casino. This is Sharky's. It opened as the Golden Bubble in 1946 and became Sharky's when it was bought by Sharky Begovich in the early 1970s. Next to the French Bar is the Adavan building. It was built around 1900, and Adavan is just Nevada spelled backwards. The plaque says that the granite blocks that we could still see were made by the Carson City Penitentiary, but I don't actually see any granite blocks. Across the street here, the shorter of the two buildings is the Arndt Jensen Merchandise, which was built around 1896. Mr. Jensen sold the adjoining property to the Masonic Lodge in 1919. And inside, it's a pretty cool antique shop. The antique shop actually takes up both buildings. We've gone down the street a little bit, and here's the old Douglas County High School. It was built in 1915, and its use as a school ended in the mid-1980s. Now it's a history and cultural center. One that unfortunately isn't open right now. Leaving Gardnerville, if you blink, you may not realize you've traveled to another town, as the two towns have kind of merged into one. This building is pretty unmissable as you drive down Highway 395. This is the Minden Flour Milling Company, and it dates back to the early 1900s. By the 1920s, this mill had become one of the biggest milling concerns in the state. It could process hundreds of barrels of flour a day, and also produce chicken and cattle feed. It operated until the 1960s. Here's an old warehouse for the mill, too. This house was the second house built in Minden, built in 1907, and it is the Henry Beck House. Henry Beck was the first manager of the milling company. And as the manager of the milling company, he did not have a far commute. This one is the A.F. Knight House, built in 1909. It was later used as a boarding house for unmarried lady school teachers. So Minden was methodically planned before a single building was constructed. It's one of the earliest master-planned communities in the United States. The town was established on the land of the Dangberg Ranch by Henry Fred Dangberg Jr., who envisioned a European-style town centered around Minden Park. And he named it after Minden, Germany, near the birthplace of his father. In 1905, the Dangberg family donated land to the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, which extended its terminus into the area, spurring rapid development. The town was formally platted on July 2, 1906, and by July 4th, the first train had arrived, and businesses, including the Minden Flour Company, were already opening. This building is not quite as old, dating back to the 1960s. Across the street, though, is the Civic Hall. This building dates back to 1912, and it served as a movie theater, a gymnasium, a live theater, a church, and a center of Carson Valley social life. and this building dates to 1951. There is also a bit of dark history here, though. Minden and Gardnerville next door were what was known as sundown towns. From 1917 to 1974, a siren would go off at 6 p.m. every day, letting Native Americans know they had 30 minutes to get out of town. This was the second Farmers Bank of Carson Valley, and it dates to 1918. The law banning Native Americans was repealed in 1974, but Minden kept the siren going, stating it was now to honor first responders, until the state forced them to stop in 2023. Across the street is the old Minden Inn. This was built in 1916, and any Hollywood celebrities or anything that would have came to town, this is where they would have stayed. And this is the COD garage. Construction began in 1911, and additions were added between 1917 and 1927. It was a garage and auto dealership for years, but now it's a casino. The old garage entrances are doors now. Here's the historic marker. This garage had a prime location right off Highway 395. And the building for this restaurant is called the Heidelberg, and it dates all the way back to 1910. There's a Schatz Bakery here too. This is owned by different family members than the Schatz Bakery in Bishop, but they have a lot of the same stuff. This bar was the site of the first Farmers Bank. And when they moved it, you didn't have to go far, because it's right across the street from the second Farmers Bank. You can still see the old bank lettering at the top. It's time for us to continue on our trip. And we are already a quarter of the way through Nevada on Highway 395. Genoa, which is the oldest settlement in Nevada, is also near here. We did a full video on it previously, so we won't be stopping on this trip, but it's definitely worth a visit if you're in the area. We've now arrived in the capital of Nevada, Carson City, named for the noted frontiersman Kit Carson. We had been in Carson Valley earlier at Gardnerville and Minden, but Carson City is instead in Eagle Valley. And in case you doubted that we were at the capital of Nevada, this plaque confirms it. Carson City was originally founded as Eagle Station in 1851. Then in 1858, Abraham Curry arrived and plotted a town site. In doing so, he set aside 10 acres expressly for the construction of a capital, and this was 3 years before Nevada even became its own territory. We have a time capsule here as well, to be opened in 2064, the 200th anniversary of Nevada becoming a state. The setting aside of this 10 acres worked out, because in 1861, Carson City was selected as the territorial capital. Then it became the state capital in 1864, and has been ever since. The Capitol grounds also has this nice park. This part of Nevada was basically settled because of mining, so it's pretty cool to see a memorial to the miners here. It looks like there are a number of different monuments at this park, so we'll take a quick walk around and check them out. Here is the famous frontiersman and scout Kit Carson, who Carson City is named for. The Carson River is nearby, and it's also named for him. He came through the area during the Fremont expedition of 1843 and 1844. This memorial honors Nevada law enforcement officers who were killed in the line of duty. And here is one honoring firefighters. We've now crossed the street, and this is the Bank Saloon, or Jack's Bar, and this was built in 1899. There are a lot of historic buildings here, but not everything stands the test of time. It looks like this huge casino across the street is now out of business. But for a hotel that has lasted, this is Nevada's oldest continuously operated hotel, the St. Charles. Built in 1862, in its early years the hotel was the region's premier lodging and social hub. It served as the area's stagecoach stop, housed the Pioneer Stage Company's office, and even likely hosted Mark Twain himself. In the late 1850s, this entire area saw a huge boom because of a lode of silver ore that was found near Virginia City, known as the Comstock Lode, and I'll talk more about that in just a bit. But as the Comstock boom faded, so did the hotel. It cycled through owners and names, and fell into disrepair, became a flop house, and even a bus depot. Then in the 1990s, restoration began on it, and in 2008, the Firkin and Fox pub opened, bringing back the hotel's historic charm and bringing new life to downtown Carson City. There's also a marker here for the Pony Express, and you can see from the little map on the marker, Carson City was a Pony Express stop. Here's a look back towards the Capitol on Highway 395. This is actually Carson Street. You can bypass downtown Carson City using an interstate if you want, but who'd want to? So I had just mentioned the Comstock Lode. That find was absolutely pivotal to Nevada's development. This cool looking building across the street was the federal government building, and construction began on it in 1888. It served as a post office and a courthouse. So in 1859, miners struck silver so rich, it would change the West forever. The find sparked a rush that transformed nearby Virginia City from a dusty camp into one of the wealthiest towns in America. Fortunes were made overnight, and the Comstock poured hundreds of millions into the United States economy, helping to finance the Union during the Civil War. There was so much silver coming out of the nearby hills that in 1870, the United States built the Carson City Mint, which is where we are heading, to turn raw Comstock metal into shiny coins stamped with a little CC. Today, collectors will pay a fortune for those. And here is the Mint building. Between when the Mint opened in 1870 and when it closed in 1893, over $49 million in coins were minted here. There is also a Lincoln Highway marker here. Between Carson City and Reno, Highway 395 and the Lincoln Highway overlapped. At one point, Highway 395 overlapped part of Route 66 in Southern California too. So, Highway 395 once partially overlapped America's two most famous highways. And there's another Pony Express marker here as well. We also have a lamp here to commemorate the dedication of the Carson City natural gas system. Here's another Pony Express monument, this one for the 100th anniversary of it. The Pony Express was an express mail service between Missouri and California that used a relay system of riders to deliver mail to the West Coast in only 10 days. It was only around for about 18 months though. Despite it only lasting about 18 months, it became extremely famous even to this day. And it looks like in 1960 they did a Centennial Pony Express ride. And it looks like on the monument they have a spot to add the last survivor from the riot at some point. So it looks like this will be updated sometime in the future. Hopefully for any of the people listed on here, not anytime soon. The Mint is now part of the Nevada State Museum. And I'd love to go inside and check out the museum and check out the Mint, but the museum is closed one day a week. And that day is today. But let's get on the road and keep heading north, as there's more to see here in western Nevada. I was a little worried that because the Nevada section of Highway 395 is so built up, that it wouldn't be incredibly scenic. But once you get out of the towns, things really open up. Thanks to the Comstock load, Lemuel Sandy Bowers and his wife, Eiley Orem Bowers, struck it rich and became Nevada's first millionaires. So what do you do as a millionaire in the 1860s? You build a giant mansion in what was then a pretty remote area. These two actually have a pretty fascinating story. Eiley ran a boarding house in Gold Hill. Some miners were unable to pay for lodging and laundry with cash, so they gave Eiley Orem pieces of their mining claims in payment. Some of those claims paid off. She married Sandy in 1859, while still legally married to someone else, and he was already getting rich from his own mining investments. Eiley wanted prestige and respectability, so a mansion like the elegant building she saw in her native Scotland was the answer. This mansion cost around $300,000 to build. Adjusted for inflation, that's nearly $10 million today. By 1865, the mines started drying up, and Sandy preferred living in a shack, while his wife preferred spending their millions of dollars. He moved back to Gold Hill, attempting to save their mine, with poor results. In early 1868, he tried to sell a portion of the mine, but died on April 21 at the age of 35. He died of silicosis, which was a common lung disease amongst miners. His estate was appraised to be worth $638,000 at the time of his death. Eiley fell on hard times after Sandy's death. She generated income by renting out rooms in the mansion and hosting parties and picnics on the grounds, but this wasn't enough to pay off her debts, and the home was foreclosed on in 1876. Eiley then became a fortune teller and died in a poorhouse in California in 1903. I had mentioned that Eiley became a fortune teller. Either she was a really good fortune teller, or this monument here is badly worded. It's dedicated to the veterans of World War II. But then it says it was erected in 1864, over 70 years before World War II started. I don't know why she didn't warn anyone. I'm sure it just means that the mansion was erected in 1864, but the way it's put together is just kind of funny. We're passing through Washoe City, and because it's been so hot, we've stopped to get some ice cream. But what kind of roadside stop would be complete without a giant something? And this place has a giant prospector. This isn't the prospector we stopped to see. And here's the big one on the hill above us. This is actually the second Washoe City. The original was founded in 1860, and at its peak in the mid-1860s, there were around 4,000 to 6,000 people there, making it the biggest town in the area. But the town had a rapid decline as it was bypassed by the railroad and Reno gained importance, and by 1880, it only had about 200 residents. I think by the early 1900s, the town was pretty much just completely gone. And check out this giant prospector, overlooking the chocolate nugget. It doesn't look like much, but we're passing through a place that Native Americans considered sacred. This is Steamboat Springs. When American settlers came west during the California Gold Rush, this was a watering place for wagons. Then in 1859, the first development to take advantage of the hot springs came about, a shed with 2 rooms, one for a tub and one for steam. Mark Twain mentioned these springs in his writings too. He claimed they got the name Steamboat Springs because of the sound the geysers made. There was an earthquake in 1900 that caused a lot of the geysers here to stop. Then the geysers stopped completely in the 1980s when a geothermal power plant was built. There is still a resort here though. The open spaces have disappeared pretty quickly, as we're now reaching the largest city along the entirety of Highway 395. In 1850, gold was discovered near Virginia City, and it brought a few people to the area. But as mentioned earlier, it was the Comstock lode that brought in thousands of people to this part of Nevada. In 1859, Charles W. Fuller, looking to profit from the influx of prospectors seeking silver, constructed a log toll bridge over the Truckee River along the California Trail. This strategic bridge, or at least a later replacement, is just ahead of us now. A small settlement catering to travelers soon developed around the bridge. Fuller sold the bridge to Myron Lake, and the settlement became known as Lake's Crossing. Here's the Washoe County Courthouse, which was built in 1911. I'm heading over to the Virginia Street Bridge, and they have some sort of art exhibit going on here with different spirit animals. When the Central Pacific Railroad reached the area in 1868, the town site was officially established and named Reno, after Union General Jesse L. Reno, a Civil War officer who was killed at the Battle of South Mountain. You know, I've never thought about what my spirit animal is, but this catbird is pretty cool. There is a lot of these spirit animals around, like this armadillo with wings. There's a weird rabbit up here. But right in front of us is the Virginia Street Bridge, where Reno really began. Here's a good look at the bridge going over the Truckee River. This current bridge was built in 2016, replacing an earlier bridge that dated all the way back to 1905. We'll head across the bridge. Luckily, there hasn't been a toll for well over 100 years. And here's the Truckee River. Reno's early growth was tied to transportation and mining, but what really put the city on the national map was its gambling and divorce laws. In the early 20th century, Nevada loosened its divorce laws to allow people to establish residency in just 6 weeks, attracting visitors from around the country. Then later, in 1931, during the Great Depression, the state legalized gambling, and Reno quickly became a gambling mecca, long before Las Vegas took the crown. And here's what the Truckee River looks like on the other side of the bridge. I think the lighting is a little bit better on this side. Here's the Club Cal Neva. At one point, its sports book was one of the most profitable in the state. But with gambling becoming more and more accessible, especially with Indian gaming in California, the casinos here aren't doing the business they once were, and a lot of them have gone out of business. Here's a sign for the Jacob Davis tailor shop. Davis invented blue jeans here in 1870, and I'm not sure where the tailor shop actually was. I don't know if it was right here. But in 1873, he moved to San Francisco and partnered with a guy named Levi Strauss. And I guess their company did all right. But somewhere right around here is where blue jeans were invented. This casino that used to be the Fitzgerald's has a giant rock wall on the outside, though it doesn't look like either the casino or the rock wall are open. There's still a piece of the Blarney Stone here from when this was the Fitzgerald's. This arch is maybe the most famous sight in Reno. Over the years, there have been at least 6 different versions of the arch. The first one was actually built on the Virginia Street Bridge back in 1899 to welcome troops returning home from the Spanish-American War. The first permanent arch was constructed in 1926, and city leaders held a contest with a $100 prize to come up with the best slogan to put on it. A Sacramento man won the money with the slogan, "The biggest little city in the world." I believe this current version of the arch dates to the late 1980s. But with that, it's time to head in for the night, and we'll see the last 18 miles of Highway 395 in Nevada in the morning. Here comes Circus Circus, which is maybe the best known hotel and casino in Reno. It's the 3rd largest hotel in the city, and it also does not currently have the same owners as Circus Circus Las Vegas. We stayed there a few years ago, and to be honest, once is probably enough as far as I'm concerned. But hey, at least it's open unlike a lot of the other casinos here in downtown Reno. And in case anyone has wondered, the clown on the sign is named Topsy the Clown. But this light is taking long enough where I'm running out of things to say about Circus Circus. Alright, let's head out of Reno. We are now driving through the University of Nevada, Reno. In 1885, the university moved here from Elko, after Elko proved to be too remote to attract any students. We're making one last quick stop in Reno. This is the Little Waldorf Saloon. It opened in 1922, and it was built by the nephew of the guy who built the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York. Despite being the smallest stretch of Highway 395, this section through Nevada is definitely the most populated section. But now that we've passed Reno, that's about to change, and we're not going to see a big city again for a while. When we first entered Nevada, I had mentioned how there is a body of water every time Highway 395 crosses a state line, with one exception. We are at that exception, though we are less than a mile from the California state line. This is White Lake, which is really a dry lake bed that sometimes has water in it. And it's also not very white, it looks pretty brown. Though I guess on Google Maps it looks kind of white. And right next to White Lake is Border Town, where you can, of course, find a casino. But it's about time for us to head back into California. Now that we've reached White Lake and Border Town, we are at the end of Highway 395 in Nevada. It's a short section, but it's filled with a lot of history. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.